Welcome back to the K Craftsman YouTube channel. This week's video, we're batching out 5 of these Keepsake boxes. So let's get right into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is mill down our material. Now I'm starting with 8/4 material, both ash and white oak. And what I'm doing is ripping everything down to the final width after I've joined an edge of it. And then I'm going to resaw it at the bandsaw at about 9/16. And then with our thicker leftover piece, I'm going to take it back to the joiner and rejoin that face so that I could then resaw again, getting 3 pieces of material out of each 8/4 stock. So we've got all of our stock milled up for our side pieces as well as our lids and bottoms. I'm going to go ahead and cut all the side pieces to their lengths. There's 2 different lengths on the rectangle, and that way we can go ahead and glue the box up itself. Wait for those to dry so we cut the splines in them later, and then while we're waiting for those to dry, we're going to cut the lid and the bottoms for these. So I've got the saw set up, everything square and 245, and we're just going to get cutting. So the first thing I'm going to do on all these pieces is cut a miter on each end. That way we have a point to start from in reference to the stop block, and then we'll set the stop block up at our length we need and get to cutting. Alright, so we got all the pieces for our boxes here. 2 end pieces and 2 side pieces. We're going to lay them down, put tape on them, and then glue them up. I'm going to look at the kind of grain and make sure it kind of flows together nicely as I take the pieces and lay them down. But this part is pretty simple, pretty easy. So let's get to it. So the glue I'm going to be using is this Titebond Quick and Thick. Now there's 2 reasons why I'm going to use it on this project. Number 1, it dries fairly fast, quicker than like Titebond 2, which is what I normally use. And number 2, it dries clear, which I think will help out in batching out these boxes. Now this whole experience here is me learning how to do work in batches. So this is a batch of 5 boxes. I plan on hopefully making these in batches of 10, 15 to 20 possibly. And so this is just kind of a trial run and working out kind of step by step what to do and how to do it. Yeah, so I think this Quick and Thick is going to be good for this project so that I can get all these glued up and then come back maybe an hour or 2 later. What's it say here? Yeah, it says clamp for a minimum of 15 minutes, where I think it's Titebond 3, it says clamp for a minimum of 30 minutes to an hour. So I could come back in 2 hours and run this on the spline jig and go ahead and get the splines put into all of these. And I think that'll speed up the workflow, so that's good. But yeah, the joints are all square. They look pretty good. We're going to go ahead and glue this one up. So I've got all the boxes glued up, and the last thing I'm going to do is on all of the miter joints, I'm just going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to run it along the edge just to push those corners as tight as they can be together, while the glue isn't all the way set up. And this will just help if there's any hairline gaps to make those disappear. So while we are waiting for our boxes to dry, we're going to go ahead and make the top and bottom pieces. So we're going to start by cutting all of them to length. Alright, so the camera stopped recording when I was cutting the tops and the bottoms on the table saw, but it is just a rectangle piece of oak, 1/2 inch thick, and we'll be doing a couple things on the two pieces, one being the lid, adding this chamfer and this rabbet around the whole piece, and then for the bottom piece, adding a rabbet around it, and it doesn't have a profile at all. Okay, so actually the bottom of the box does have the same chamfer that the lid does. And I did this for a few reasons. Number one is that on the prototype box that I made, the bottom was not a 1/2 inch like the lid of the box is. So to keep the process efficient and just quick and easy, instead of making the bottom material thinner than the top material and having materials with a bunch of different thicknesses, I've made all the material the same thickness. So we're going with 1/2 inch, and that's on the walls of the box, that's on the bottom of the box, and the lid of the box. Everything's a 1/2 inch, and that's just to keep everything simple. So when I'm milling down all the materials, it's all the same. I run it through the planer at the same thickness, and everything is the same. That makes it efficient and easy, saving time and therefore money on these boxes. And so because of that, the bottom sticks out further on this than it did on the prototype, and I just thought that was too bulky of a look. So adding that chamfer on the bottom of the box, I think really just completes the look itself. It looks symmetrical and complete when you pick up the box and look at it. And also when it's sitting on a desk, it doesn't look as tall and bulky on the bottom. So yeah, we actually ended up doing the chamfer on the bottom pieces. So the rabbet is going to be the same on the top and the bottom, and then we'll go back and add the chamfer on only the tops. But we have all of the frames of the boxes built, so we're going to go ahead and cut the splines into each of the miter joints to strengthen them up, and we'll be doing that by using a spline cutting jig on the table saw. So let's go ahead and knock that out real quick. So I'm switching out blades here because these teeth are angled. It's not a flat tooth blade, whereas this blade here has flat teeth on it. That's just so when we put the spline into the joint, it'll be tight all the way through the cut. For the actual splines itself, I'm just going to resaw this white oak strip in half and then plane it down to the thickness, and then we'll kind of cut it up as we need it. But this should be more than plenty of material, so we're going to do that. Alright, so these fit in here nicely. You don't want them too tight, but you also don't want them too loose. Kind of got to be somewhat perfect fit. Plus, once you go adding glue in there, you don't really want to be having to hammer these in. So we're going to rip these strips probably in half and then cut a bunch of small pieces, and then we should have a bunch of stock later when we do more batches of these, so we don't have to worry about it. So let's cut these up and glue them in. So you can't really see me gluing in any of the splines because I set the shot up for me to work on the table, and I end up working over the table and completely out of the shot, but I'm just gluing up the splines and the joints here. So at the end there, I kind of switched it up and used this Titebond Quick and Thick instead of the Titebond 2. That's because the Titebond 2 is very runny compared to this Quick and this stuff doesn't really run at all. And with these splines, there tends to be a lot of squeeze out, so it just makes a mess and it gets all over the wood. With the Titebond 2, plus this stuff dries clear, so I'm thinking I should have done them all with this, but like I said, I experimented at the end there, so we'll see if this seems any better or worse, and if not, I'll probably just end up using this all the time in the future because it's just less messy. So I think I'm definitely going to end up going with the Quick and Thick on the splines. It was just, like I said, a lot less messy, and the end result is just the same. So less mess equals less cleanup, saving you more time on these. So that Quick and Thick definitely is the way to go. Another point is that it dries faster than Titebond 2 would. So really the same day I can trim these down, sand them, and not have to worry about stressing anything or the joint coming loose. So we're gonna let all those dry, then we'll cut them off and everything and sand everything down. In the meantime, we can work on our top and bottom pieces. So over here at the router table, I have a rabbiting bit set up in the router and a bearing that will leave us a 1/4 inch from the bearing to the cutter of the router piece. So let's set this in the table. And our height is going to be 1/8 of an inch. This is a little more than our spline material. And after cutting the rabbets on all the pieces here, I switch over to my 45-degree chamfer bit and set that up in the router and run all the pieces through. Alright, so the splines are dried and ready to be trimmed. Now I saw this idea on YouTube somewhere, I don't remember where, but if I do, I'll try and link the video. It's basically a fence where I can reference the box itself, and we couldn't do that with a normal fence because there's splines sticking out, so the fence is just a tiny sliver that references in between the splines on the box, and so now I can cut those close to flush. And then we'll set the fence again to cut the ends. And that way just makes this process quicker in cutting all these. So let's do it. Alright, so now the last piece we have to make for this project is the handle that goes on the top of the box. So I've already milled down some ash that is basically the square profile of this, and now we have to rip a couple of chamfers on each side and then cross cut them down to length. So we're going to start with the angled rip and then we'll cut everything to length. So I've got our piece ripped here on both sides with that chamfer on it, and now I think the best way to cut the rest of it is to use the miter saw, because you could see here on the edge that there is a still square profile that runs along the top. The chamfer doesn't go all the way through, so because of that we have to cut all the pieces square first and then cut the little chamfer on the edge of it. So we're just going to set the stop block up to cut everything square, knock them out, and then we'll come back and carefully cut this chamfer on everything. And when cutting these chamfers on the miter saw, you can see I'm using this stick here to push down the piece instead of my fingers, because these pieces are only like 2¼ inches wide, so trying to hold that while cutting with the miter saw, or any saw for that matter, is just too risky. And so using a stick or something to hold it down in combination with a stop block so that it's held tightly in place will very well save your fingers. So always work smart and safe. And with the handles done, we're just going to go ahead and glue on the bottom pieces, again using that quick and thick glue, just putting a bead around the whole rabbet, inserting the piece and cleaning up all the squeeze out with a straw. So all that's left now is just to sand everything before we put the finish on and attach the handles to the lids. Now to accurately and quickly attach these with glue to these, I'm going to make a template that'll give me a guide that I can just set over the piece, glue the piece on, take it off. So what I'm going to do is basically just make an L-shaped block that this can register onto, that we can glue it. But I'll just show you the end product and you'll see what I mean by that. Okay, so here is this little jig I made to assemble the handles. So you basically just, it has a fence here, you just register it against, you lock it in there, you put your glue on this piece, put it in there, and it'll be centered. So what I do with these is, again, this quick and thick, both sides, and in the middle we're going to use CA glue. I'm going to spray the lid and just lay it on there. Apply some pressure till the CA glue sets up. And we could come with our straw, clean up all the squeeze out, and there we go. And we're just going to do a final sand on the whole box, the walls, and the bottom, making sure to get all the marks out from the disc sander and any other imperfections in the wood. And we'll just take it outside and spray on the finish. Alright, and with that we're ready to spray the finish. I'm just going to use a spray can polyacrylic, quick and easy. So I'll just probably spray 2 or 3 coats on and we'll be done. So I'm going to go do that and then we'll meet back in here to wrap up this video. Not really going to show spraying this because it's just like spraying with spray paint, not too difficult. So let me go do that. Of 5 of these Keepsake boxes. I definitely learned a lot about making the process efficient and when to cut certain pieces just to keep everything flowing to, again, keep the process as efficient as possible. So I'm in the works now of making a website so I can sell these boxes on them along with other products that I have planned. But yeah, that's just a little insight onto batching out different things. And this kind of applies to anything you would make a batch of, whether you're making cutting boards, coasters, any product at all. It's good to do small test runs to figure out where your inefficiencies are, where you can move around different steps while you have a certain machine set up, just to make the process quicker and easier for you. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and a comment letting me know your thoughts. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Have a chat in the comments. If you're not subscribed, make sure you are, and stay tuned for weekly woodworking videos. And if you want to see more content during the week, I'm always posting on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Links for those are all down below in the subscription. Definitely give me a follow on all those platforms. I'm posting constantly throughout the week, giving you guys updates of what I'm working on. And so yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.